Hello, 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 and welcome back to Morning Stir and Through the Bible with Yolanda Worldwide here on YouTube. Let me go ahead and say welcome to those of you who are joining in as a replay viewers. Excuse me. I'm so glad you're here. If you are brand new to this audience, I want to welcome you as well. And if you're replay, go ahead and give me a hashtag replay in the public comments. For those of you that are new, let me know that as well in the comments. And make sure you subscribe and click on the little bell for notifications so that you don't miss anything in the future. Again, welcome to Morning Stir with Yolanda Worldwide here, Morning Stir and Through the Bible with Yolanda Worldwide here on YouTube. I'm so glad you're here. For those of you, my people who are here live with me, you know I love y'all so much for hanging out with me first thing in the morning. Number one, go ahead and greet me in whatever way you do in your part of the world. Number two, let me know where in the world you're joining in from. Number three, help me by clicking the little thumbs up on the screen. Number four, help me by sharing this broadcast far and wide. And then if you are, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Let's make our declaration. I'm stirred up. I'm stirred up. I am stirred all the way up. We are going to be praying in the spirit for a few moments. I'll share whatever the Lord is laying on my heart for today. And then we're going to dive straight on into our readings. We are reading through the Bible from Genesis to Revelation. We are in the book of Deuteronomy and we'll be picking up at chapter 13 today. But for now, let's begin to pray in the Holy Ghost. Rakatamandi ikerekete. Rakatamandi elebakote kelebataya. Rakatayandi arabakore kerebata. Rekete mandi akarakata. Rokotamandi elebakote kelebata. Rekete yalabakore kerebata. Rekete yalabakote kerebata. Rekete yalabakore kerebata. Randi elebakote kelebata. Rekete yalabakore kerebata. Rekete yalabakore kerebata. Rekete yalabakote kerebata. Nandi elebakote kelebata. Rekete yalabako rekedebata, randi yalabako de kedebata, rekete yalabako rekedebataya, rekete yalabako de kedebata, rekete yalabako de kelebata, randi yalabako de kelebata, rekete yalabako rekedeyataya, rekete yalabako rekedebata, rekete yalabako de kelebata, randi yalabako de kelebata, rendi yalabako de kelebata, rakatamandi yalabako kelebata, randi yelebakote kelebata, rekete mandi yelebakote kelebata, rakatamandi yelebakote kelebataya, rokota yelebakore kerebataya, randi yelebakore kerebata, randi yelebakote kelebataya, rekete yelebakore kerebata, randi yelebakore kelebata, randi ikerekete, rekete yelebakote kelebata, rakatamandi yelebakote kelebata, yelebakore kerebata, rakatamandi ikerekete, mandi akarakata, rekete yelebakote kelebata, rekete yelebakote kelebata, roko tamandi ikerekete, roko tamandi ikarakata, roko tamandi ikarakataya, rekete yada bakore kedebata, randi ikerekete, roko tamandi ikarakata, roko tamandi ikarakata, roko tamandi ikerekete, makarakata, roko tamandi ikerekete, makarakataya, roko te yele bakote kelebata, rekete yele bakote kelebata. Yalabakore kedebata, rekete yalabakore kedebata, rakata yalabakote kedebata, yalabakore kedebata, randi yalabakote kelebataya, rekete yalabakote kelebata, randi ike rekete, rokotamandi yalabakote kelebata, rakata yalabakote kelebata, rakata yalabakore kedebata, randi yalabakote kelebata, rekete yalabakote kedebata, rekete yalabakore kedebata, randi ike rekete, kete, rakata yala bakote kelebata, rakata mandi ikerekete, rakata yala bakote kelebata, rekete yala bakote kelebataya, ikerekete, rekete yala bakote kelebata, randi ikarakata, rokota makarakata, rokata yala bakote kelebata, yete mandi ikerekete, rokata mandi ikarakata, yele bakote kelebata, randi ikerekete, rokata mandi alabakote kelebata. Yelebakoreke de bataya, roko tamandi ikarakata, rekete yelebakote kelebata, yelebakoreke de bata, randi ikerekete, makarakataya, roko tamandi ikarakata, yelebakote kelebata, yete mandi ikarakata, rekete yelebakote kelebata, mandi ikerekete, roko tamandi ikarakata, roko tamandi ikerekete, mandi ikarakata, rekete mandi ikerekete, rokotamandi ikarakata, randi ikereketeya, rokotamandi ikarakata, marabakore kerebata, yelebakore kerebataya, randi ikarakataya, okoreketeya labakote ke, marabakore kedebata, randi yelebakote kelebata, rekete yelebakote kedebata, rekete yelebakote kelebata, randi ikerekete, rakatamandi ikarakata, randi ikerekete, rakatamandi ikarakata, randi ikerekete, rakatamandi ikarakata, rakatamandi ikerekete, rekete yelebakore kedebata, randi ikarakata, rokotamandi yelebakote kelebata, yelebakare de bata, randi ikerekete, rokatamandi yelebakote kelebata, yelebakareke de bata, randi ikerekete, rekete mandi ikarakata, randi ikarakataya, rokotamandi ikerekete, mandi ikarakata, randi yelebakote kelebataya, o koshete mandi ikarakataya, rekete yelebakote kelebata, miyalabakode kete maya. And what I began to hear God saying today as I was praying is that He's closer than you think. It's closer than you think, is what I actually heard first. It's closer than you think because He's closer than you think. Did you know that God is just one call, one prayer away? Psalm 145:18 puts it this way: the Lord is near to all who call on Him. To all who call on Him in truth. The Lord is near to all who call on Him, to all who call on Him in truth. We're praying, but do we have the truth of our trust in God? We talked about God, that we have to trust God for who He is. This week, we talked about that. That's how our blessings flow. Now He said He's near to those who call on Him in truth. We're calling on Him, but what are we calling on Him about? Is our heart posture in congruence with what we are asking of God? Is our mind, our will, our emotions, our soul, is it in congruence with what we are calling on God for? I feel like the Lord is calling us to a place of alignment. And then whatever we need, it's like it's right there. And some of you feel it because it's almost like you feel it like you're at the end of a pregnancy. It's right there. One call away, one true call away, boom, and the water breaks. The floodgates come open. When God began to deal with me about making myself a project, my God, I knew we were on to something. I knew we were on to something. Because He's dealing with the inside of me. You as well. It's closer than you think. It's within your reach. It's within the reach of your voice crying out to God. Call unto me, and I'll show you great and mighty things, says God. My God. We're still in Deuteronomy, picking up at the 13th chapter, still in the Message version for those who are following along. So let's dive on into the reading. My God. It's within reach, y'all. It's closer than you think. One true call away. Deuteronomy chapter 13. When a prophet or visionary gets up in your community and gives out a miracle sign or wonder, and the miracle sign or wonder that he gave out happens, and he says, let's follow other gods. These are gods you know nothing about. Let's worship them. Don't pay any attention to what the prophet or visionary says. Don't pay any attention. God says, God, your God, is testing you to find out if you totally love him with everything you have in you. My God. You are to follow only God, your God. Hold him in deep reverence. Keep his commandments. Listen obediently to what he says. Serve him. Hold on to him for dear life. And that prophet or visionary must be put to death. He has urged mutiny against God, your God, who rescued you from Egypt, who redeemed you from a world of slavery and put you on the road on which God, your God, has commanded you to walk. Purge the evil from your company. And when your brother or son or daughter, or even your dear wife or lifelong friend comes to you in secret and whispers, let's go and worship some other gods, God that you know nothing about, neither you nor your ancestors, the gods of the people around you, and near and far, from one end of the earth to the other, don't go along with him. Shut your ears. Don't feel sorry for him and don't make excuses for him. Kill him. My God. Right. That's right. Kill him. You throw the first stone, take action at once and swiftly, with everybody in the community getting in on it and at the end. Stone him with stones so that he dies. He tried to turn your traitor against God, your God, the one who got you out of Egypt and the world of slavery. Every man, woman, and child in Israel will hear what's been done and be in awe. No one will dare to do an evil thing like this again. When word comes in from one of your cities that God, your God, is giving you to live in, reporting that evil men have gotten together with some of the citizens of the city and have broken away, saying, let's go and worship other gods, gods you know nothing about, then you must conduct a careful examination, ask questions, investigate. If it turns out that the report is true and this abomination did in fact take place in your community, you must execute the citizens of that town, kill them, setting that city apart for holy destruction, the city and everything in it, including its animals. Gather the plunder in the middle of the town square and burn it all, town and plunder together, up in smoke, a holy sacrifice to God, your God. Leave it there, ashes and ruins. Don't build on that site again. And don't let any of the plunder devoted to holy destruction stick to your fingers. Get rid of it so that God may turn from anger to compassion, generously making you prosper, just as he promised your ancestors. Yes, obediently listen to God, your God. Keep all his commands that I am giving you today. Do the right thing in the eyes of God, your God. Chapter 14. You are children of God, your God. So don't mutilate your bodies or shave your heads in funeral rites or for the dead. You only are a people holy to God, your God. God chose you out of all the people on the earth as his cherished personal treasure. Don't eat anything abominable. These are the animals you may eat: ox, sheep, goat, deer, gazelle, roebuck, wild goat, ibex, antelope, mountain sheep, any animal that has a cloven hoof and chew the cud. But you may not eat camel camels, rabbits, and rock badgers, because they chew the cud, but they don't have a cloven hoof. That makes them ritually unclean. And pigs don't eat pigs. They have a cloven hoof, but don't chew the cud, which makes them ritually unclean. Don't even touch a pig's carcass. This is what you may eat from the water: anything that has fins and scales, but if it doesn't have fins or scales, you may not eat it. It's ritually unclean. You may eat any ritually clean bird. These are the exceptions, so don't eat these: eagle, vulture, black vulture, kite, falcon, the buzzard family and raven family, ostrich, nighthawk, and the hawk family, little owl, great owl, white owl, pelican, osprey, cormorant, stork, the heron family, hoopoe, bat. Winged insects are ritually unclean. Don't eat them, but ritually clean winged creatures are permitted. Because you are a people holy to God your God, don't eat anything that you find dead. You can, though, give it to a foreigner in your neighborhood for a meal or sell it to a foreigner. Don't boil a kid in its mother's milk. Make an offering of 10%, a tithe of all the produce which grows in your fields year after year. Bring this into the presence of God your God at the place he designates for worship, and there eat the tithe from your grain, wine, and oil, and the firstborn from the herds and flocks. In this way, you will learn to live in deep reverence before God your God as long as you live. But if the place your God designates for worship is too far away and you can't carry your tithe that far, God your God will still bless you. Exchange your tithe for money and take the money to the place God your God has chosen to be worshiped. Use the money to buy anything you want: cattle, sheep, wine, or beer, anything that looks good to you. You and your family can then feast in the presence of God your God and have a good time. Meanwhile, don't forget to take good care of the Levites who live in your towns. They won't get any property or inheritance of their own, as you will. At the end of every third year, gather the tithe from all your produce of that year and put it aside in storage. Keep it in reverence for the Levite who won't get any property or inheritance, as you will, and for the foreigner, the orphan, and the widow who live in your neighborhood. That way they'll have plenty to eat, and God, your God, will bless you all in your work. Chapter 15. At the end of every seventh year, cancel all debts. This is the procedure. Everyone who has lent money to a neighbor writes it off. You must not press your neighbor or his brother for any payment. All debts are canceled. God says so. You may collect payment from foreigners, but whatever you have lent to your fellow Israelite, you must write off. There must be no poor people among you. There must be no poor people among you, because God is going to bless you lavishly in the land that God your God is giving you as an inheritance, your very own land. Y'all know it's a sin for us to be, there must be no poor among us. But only if you listen obediently to the voice of God your God diligently, only if you listen, observing every commandment that I command you today. Oh yes, God your God will bless you just as he promised. You will lend to many nations, but won't borrow from any. You rule over many nations, but none of will rule over you. When you happen on someone who's in trouble or needs help among your people with whom you live in this land that God your God is giving you, don't look the other way pretending you don't see him. Don't keep a tight grip on your purse. No, look at him. Open your purse. Lend whatever and as much as he needs. Don't count the cost. Don't listen to that selfish voice. It's almost the seventh year. The year all debts are canceled, and turn aside and leave your needy neighbor in the lurch, refusing to help him. He'll call God's attention to you and your blatant sin. Give freely and spontaneously. Don't have a stingy heart. The way you handle matters like this triggers God. Your God's blessing in everything you do, all your work and ventures. There are always going to be poor and needy people among you, so I command you, always be generous. Open purse and hands. Give to your neighbors in trouble, your poor and hurting neighbors. If a Hebrew man or Hebrew woman was sold to you, as has served for 6 years, in the seventh year, you must set him or her free, released into the free life. And when you set them free, don't send them off empty-handed. Provide them with some animals, plenty of bread and wine and oil. Load them with provisions from all the blessings with which God, your God, has blessed you. Don't for a minute forget that you were once slaves in Egypt, and God, your God, redeemed you from that slave world. For that reason, this day I command you to do this. But if your slave, because he loves you and your family and has a good life with you, says, I don't want to leave you, and take an awl and pierce through his earlobe into the doorpost, marking him as your slave forever. Do the same with your women slaves who want to stay with you. Don't consider this an unreasonable hardship, this setting your slave free. After all, he's worked 6 years for you and at half the cost of a hired hand. Believe me, God your God will bless you in everything you do. Set apart to God your God all the firstborn males in the herds and flocks. Don't use them, the firstborn from your herds, as work animals. Don't shear the firstborn from your flocks. These are for you to eat every year, you and your family, in the presence of God, your God, at the place that God designates for worship. If the animal is defective, lame, say, or blind, anything wrong with it, don't slaughter it as a sacrifice to God, your God. Stay at home and eat it there. Both the ritually clean and unclean may eat it, the same as with a gazelle or a deer. Only you must not eat its blood. Pour the blood out on the ground like water. Chapter 16. Observe the month of Abib by celebrating the Passover to God your God. It was in the month of Abib that God your God delivered you by night from Egypt. Offer the Passover sacrifice to God your God at the place God chooses to be worshiped by establishing his name there. Don't eat yeast bread with it for 7 days. Eat it with unraised bread, hard times bread, because you left Egypt in a hurry. That bread will keep the memory fresh of how you left Egypt for as long as you live. There is to be no sign of yeast anywhere for 7 days, and don't let any of the meat that you sacrifice in the evening be left over until morning. Don't sacrifice the Passover in any of the towns that God your God gives you, other than the one God your God designates for worship. There and there only you will offer the Passover sacrifice at evening as the sun goes down, marking the time that you left Egypt. Boil and eat it at the place designated by God your God. Then at daybreak, turn around and go home. Eat unraised bread for 6 days. Set aside the 7th day as a holiday. Don't do any work. Starting from the day you put the sickle to the ripe grain, count out 7 weeks. Celebrate the Feast of Weeks to God, your God, by bringing your freewill offering. Give as generously as God, your God, has blessed you. Rejoice in the presence of God, your God. You, your son, your daughter, your servant, your maid, the Levite who lives in your neighborhood, the foreigner, the orphan, and widow among you. Rejoice at the place God, your God, will set aside to be worshiped. Don't forget that you were once a slave in Egypt, so be diligent in observing these regulations. Observe the Feast of Booths for 7 days, when you gather the harvest from your threshing floor and your wine vat. Rejoice at your festival, you, your son, your daughter, your servant, your maid, the Levite, the foreigner, and the orphans and widows who live in your neighborhood. Celebrate the feast of God, your God, for 7 days at the place of God. Designates God, your God, has been blessing you in the harvest and in all your work. So make a day of it. Really celebrate. All your men must appear before God, your God, 3 times each year at the place he designates at the Feast of Unraised Bread, Passover, at the Feast of Weeks, and at the Feast of Booths. No one is to show up in the presence of God empty-handed. Each man must bring as much as he can manage, giving generously in response to the blessings of God your God. Appoint judges and officers organized by tribes in all the towns that God your God is giving you. They are to judge the people fairly and honestly. Don't twist the law. Don't play favorites. Don't take a bribe. A bribe blinds even a wise person. It undermines the intentions of the best of people. The right. Pursue only what's right. It's the only way you can really live and possess the land that God, your God, is giving you. Don't plant fertility, a share of trees alongside the altar of God, your God, that you build. Don't set up phallic sex pillars. God, your God, hates them. My God. Hate what God hates and love what God loves, people. It's time. We're going to stop right there. We just read up through Deuteronomy 16. That was chapters 13 through 16. We're going to pick up there at the 17th chapter tomorrow and continue on. We're making our way through. I think we only have about 11 or 12 chapters left in the book of Deuteronomy. And so we'll finish right here for today. And again, we're still in the midst of Defy Hell Today challenge. Make sure you make your way over to Yolanda Worldwide every night, even through the weekend. We don't go through the weekend on Morning Stir and through the Bible, but every night for the Defy Hell Today challenge, 31 days straight, 31 proclamations to overturn and cancel hell's agenda. We are overthrowing hell with a punch, people of God. And so make sure you get over there. If you feel led to give, the instructions are always in the description of the videos. I love you with the love of God. I'll see you again tomorrow. Blessings, blessings, blessings to you, and see you really soon.